everyone, and welcome to Back at the Ranch, Expedition Online's after show. My name is Jessica Martin from season 1, and I am here with my co-host KF from Kilimanjaro, and we have our final 3 finalists, David Jackson here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
We're super happy to have you. You were one of my personal favorites this season, and I know as far the mods speaking, you were loved this season. We enjoyed watching you play, so it's really an honor to basically be able to talk to you and pick through your brain tonight to see how the game was from your perspective.
Thanks. I'm glad my game was enjoyed. I had a ton of fun playing it. So
yeah, it's cool because you're friends with Brandon, who was my alliance member in my season.
That's
and
right.
It was really fun for me to watch you play because I felt like you played the game that Brandon would have played if he didn't get swap screwed.
Right. No, me and Brandon were adversaries in a previous game, and we were all gunning for each other, and kept on getting saved by idols and different twists and turns. And we ended up facing each other in a fire making challenge to get to the finals. And I ended up besting him there, and he ended up giving me his vote. So I love Brandon a lot, and we've stayed in touch and been good friends after.
Basically, you're telling us that you've played these type of games before. How was this time around playing with us with Expedition Online? How did you enjoy this experience?
It was great. Yeah, I've never played a game quite like this. Having this kind of time limit where there's just like these 3 hours that we're playing the game, and then after that, no contact with anyone else, no plotting, no anything off camera. Now that I have a little 7-month-old daughter, my wife would kill me if I played a game where I'm just like chatting with people all day, 24 hours. So, but it was a ton of fun. It was a great cast. It was super memorable personalities and lots of twists and turns. So it was a ton of fun, great season. And the fact that, Janet, Kelly, and Ethan were all involved at different points made it like pretty special. So,
Yeah. So what were your thoughts day 0? You're dropped into a room with everyone. First of all, were you happy with the captain that chose you? And then second of all, who stood out to you the first day that you were like, I want to work with this person?
I was really happy with my captain. Janet is just like such a sweetheart. I knew she'd just be such a kind of a nurturing personality. And she was very open about like, yeah, message me if you need advice and this and that. So I did message her a bit throughout the season, just kind of picking her mind on certain things. So yeah, she was a phenomenal captain. In terms of day 0, yeah, I mean, talking to people, certainly I felt pretty good about people I was in room with and made it the day 0 alliance with me, Mariana, and Danielle and Jess, who I never even got to play with. But probably the person I was closest with from the get-go was Mike. Mike kind of saw my little nerd posters behind me here, and he was immediately like, you're my kind of person. And we just kind of started talking about just personal stuff because the game hadn't even started yet. And so me and him had a pretty close bond from the get-go. And I think we knew pretty immediately that we would be good allies together in this game. So
now we all here know how hectic and chaotic day 0 can be. So you just told us that you were able to talk to some people, but were there any other people that stood out to you, but that you didn't necessarily get the chance to talk to on day 0? Because it seems like a lot of time, but there's so many people, and it doesn't end up being that much time to be able to talk to anyone.
I know. The way it ended up going is that almost all of the people I talked to ended up being Kelly's. So a lot of the relationships I made on day 0 were not because Mariana, I talked to Neil for a good while. I talked to Philip. So a lot of the people I was talking to on day 0 did not end up being people that I ended up even being on the same group with. So day 1, I had to kind of start from scratch. I had like Danielle I'd talked to a bit, and Mike I'd talked to a bit, but that was mostly it. Yeah, so a lot of those people I ended up being able to talk to right away, but it might have been nice or could have worked in my favor if I had talked to Karl a bit more on day 0 or Josh on day 0, because I certainly didn't have as many connections on day 1 as some other people that end up talking to people that just happened to be on the same group.
Well, the other side to that question is, was there anyone that stood out, not necessarily for the right reason, and that definitely you were like, red flag, I have to be careful. And I definitely know that Janet actually gave you some names on day 0. And
Yeah.
so like, were the antennas up early in day 0?
Yeah. So Janet certainly did mention Philip and Neil from early on, and Philip, just from talking to him right away, you can just tell he's hyper intelligent and a gamer. So he was someone that, and I knew to kind of keep my eye on immediately. So I wasn't really too surprised that Janet mentioned him. Neil was a bit more surprising because Neil seemed a bit more low key and but seemed like a really good dude. But probably the biggest the most memorable impression from day 0 might have been Anthony, because Anthony was just so excited to play and so overeager. I was literally in 3 different rooms with him, 3 different rooms. And when he came in, and after like 30 seconds, he'd be like, I have a great feeling about this room. These people in here, you know, we should all work together. And just so you know, Karl tried to make an alliance with me, and you should all know Karl tried to make an alliance with me. And it was a lot. And then, you know, and we were all thinking, oh, that's okay. But, you know, to me, it's like, Karl trying to make an alliance with you isn't necessarily a bad thing on Karl's part. It's actually kind of like, well, if I try and make an alliance with you, Anthony, are you just going to tell everyone else? Like, how do I know who you're loyal to and who you're throwing under the bus? And but then I'd be in a different room, and he'd pop in. I could tell he didn't even realize that I was in the same room twice, and he did the exact same thing, where he said, "Oh, I feel good about this. Karl tried to make alliance with me. You know, let's work together." I was like, "Oh, Anthony, you're trying to align with everyone, and when you try and align with everyone so openly, you're kind of aligned with no one."
And this all happened just on day 0. So thankfully,
yeah, that was all day 0.
Thankfully, you guys won the first challenge, so you had time to hang out. But then you guys ended up losing the second challenge, which was the day that Katie got picked to go to Serrated Peak. But what you were just talking about kind of ties in to that vote. Was that the driving factor of Anthony going home that night?
It is. I'm not going to say I was the one that kind of drove the vote in that one, but I certainly did put Anthony's name out there. I didn't want to take like too much of a leadership role or strategically or otherwise early on, just because that makes you a big target. But certainly when people ask me, I just kind of like tell that story of like, this is what Anthony did on day 0, and that's kind of unpredictable behavior. So I certainly did put Anthony's name out there, and a lot of people were on the same page. So we were able to make a decision on him in about 5 minutes, and just kind of had to spend our time trying. And the whole twist with the Destiny token is it really emphasizes the blind side even more. And so we had to spend the rest of the time trying to make Anthony feel it wasn't him. And as much as you'd like to be a good person, and like, he's such a great kid, and had such this great energy. And if he hadn't come in so overeager, I could certainly see myself playing with him. But
you just said something that was actually quite interesting, because from my perspective, at least, you guys were a party full of personalities, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering if at any point anyone, maybe you, thought of maybe like flipping the script a little bit, or was it that straightforward of a vote? Because he had basically become the biggest of the personalities.
Yeah, if to me it was pretty easy. And if someone wanted to flip the script, I would have been open to it. My strategy early on was really just to not steer the ship, but try and make sure the ship went in a direction I didn't mind. Okay. So there were certain people I would want to protect, but as long as it's not someone that I really wanted to work with deep, I'm fine with how the vote goes, instead of trying to force my preference, because I just think forcing your preference when there's several people you don't trust, that's not smart early on. But yeah, for me, there wasn't a whole lot of things going behind the scenes. I might certainly watch the episode and find out, oh wow, there was more names out there than I thought. But
the other thing Jess just mentioned also is that you guys were introduced to the first, I guess, big twist of the season, serrated peak. Now, I guess my question is twofold here. What was your what is your opinion on that twist, and what did you think of Katie going being the first one chosen to go?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised necessarily that she was chosen just because without the other party knowing, they just know, oh, she's the older woman, she might be in trouble, so they're trying to maybe throw us a bit of a curveball. But Katie was pretty beloved in our tribe at that point, and to me, it did kind of throw a curveball, just because usually when I play games, I am really good at finding idols or finding advantages or things of that nature. So the fact that the serrated peak was set up as kind of the main place where advantages and compasses are found almost played against my usual strategy in a bit, just because I had less control about when I went there, and I never ended up even going. So
you were able to adapt. I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you were able to adapt your game to your style of play to the game that you were handed. So
Exactly. And speaking of twists, we had another twist thrown in pretty early. So serrated peaks introduced, and then the next day you guys have a tribe swap into 3 parties.
Yeah.
You ended up in a good position though. You had Katie and Hallie versus Bridget and Bill from Team Kelly. So you guys had the majority. What did you think about your new party?
Yeah, so initially it looked really good, just because, and Haley was someone that I'd initially her and Mike had formed kind of a trio early on, and we had really good vibes, and I felt really good about the 3 of us. So the fact that I was with Haley, I was like, yes. Katie, I hadn't talked to one-on-one as much, and I knew that she didn't know the game very well. And so I knew playing with her might be pretty unpredictable, and it certainly proved to be the case. But overall, it definitely worked well in our favor. But with the parties being so small, anything can happen, and there's a lot of unpredictability there, because they kind of openly know that we're only going for one of the 2 of them if we were to lose. And destiny tokens, advantages, there's so many things to go into play. And after that loss, that might have been the most stressful crossroads of the entire season. Yeah.
I can see you're reliving it already.
Oh my gosh.
The stress is coming back to you.
I recorded a 20-minute confessional over 5 parts after that one, because I was just so flabbergasted, and it was unlike any crossroads or tribal council from any game I've ever played. It was nuts.
It was definitely interesting. So you guys lose that day because Bill took a little long on the puzzle, had a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I did write down some numbers at that point. According to the little timer at the bottom, he took 16 minutes and 30 seconds at the jigsaw puzzle. Everyone else, every other tribe, finished below 13 minutes for everything combined. So yeah, I'm just glad that there wasn't Doc's, pulling a Jeff Probst in the background saying biggest blowout and expedition online history.
No, you're safe with that one. In previous seasons, people that shall not be named didn't even get to finish the challenge. You had to just call it quits because it was taking so long. So.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, they did have Bill turn on the shadow mode on the jigsaw, and at that point I was like, it's over. The challenge is over. And I believe Bill was the second one to go out of 5. So, and I already started kind of strategizing during the challenge as to how we were going to make the vote happen, because
it's interesting that you bring that up, because obviously, so at this point, the obvious choice would be Bill because of performance in the challenge. Now, Bill ends up being the one voted out that night, but for you guys, during the strategy session, was there anything that Bill or Bridget said during the night that, you know, made you consider switching sides to their side, or were you strong Janet and you just wanted to keep the numbers at that point?
I think because we never got to know Bill or Bridget before we started competing with them. If there had been an extra day to maybe develop relationships, I could possibly see that being the thing. But when there's only an hour to strategize and to even get to know these people, there wasn't enough time to really build much of a trust, because at that point, I needed to stick with the surest group to make sure my name wasn't coming out. If I started, you know, throwing out Katie's name or Haley's name to Bill or Bridget as a possibility, they could easily take that information back and turn the vote on me. So, you know, it really was with a small group and with people I didn't know, you know, it just needed to be as safe of a vote as possible. But like I said, if I got home for a day or two before we actually went to it, it totally could have changed. I could have built more of a relationship, more of a trust, but there was just so little time. But yeah, it ended up being Bill being the obvious choice just because of challenge performance. And I could also see Bridget and Bill made it very clear that they weren't willing to vote for either one, for each other. So that just kind of puts a bigger target of like, oh, they're really close, we need to split them up. And they try to put the target on Katie just because she was a bit unpredictable. She didn't even know we lost the challenge until about 15 minutes after the challenge was over. And you know, Bridget is like, are you sure you like, we can't work with her? And she didn't know whether Crossroads was good or bad either. That was another big one of like, oh, Katie doesn't even know like what a Crossroads is, because she wasn't there for the Anthony one. This was her first Crossroads.
Yeah.
So yeah, they really, but I talked to Bridget after the vote, and it was just kind of like, you have to understand, it's not about this vote, it's about the next vote. And then we're in a 2-2 tie. Like, that doesn't benefit me. That puts a lot of unpredictability into the game if I let it become a 2-2 tie and keep you two, who are openly very close to each other. I knew that we had to kind of split the votes, because if one of them played the Destiny cube, Destiny token, I didn't want, you know, them to choose who's going home. So the whole plan was to put 2 votes on Bill and 1 vote on Bridget, so that if a Destiny token was played, they would lose their vote. So then it would just be 1 vote for whoever. And then if on a revote, we would have control of who goes home. So I thought it was a foolproof plan. It's so simple. All Katie needs to do is vote for Bill, and we're fine. It's foolproof as long as there's not any additional advantages in play. But, you know, as you know, Katie played her Destiny token for no reason at all. And it's just one of those, you know, things where, as much as I love Katie, and I love Katie this day, she was so unpredictable to play with, because she, you know, playing with her was almost spinning a wheel. You know, sometimes you just never knew exactly what she was going to do. But if Bill and Bridget had just voted together, they could have gotten whoever they wanted out. And that was kind of terrifying.
This is also the night, if I'm not mistaken, where after the vote, you end up talking to Katie and getting her compass. So this is
that was actually go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, this is probably one of the most pivotal points in the game. At this point, all the viewers will know how this will have affected your game, but the whole game really. And so,
right.
Can you just walk us through what's going through your mind, like what your perspective through the post-vote conversation? Because yeah, that like it doesn't get more pivotal than that.
It was a bit. So basically, after the Crossroads, that's when Bridget told me that Katie had a compass. So I didn't even have that information until after Bill was gone. But in the 5 minutes after Crossroads, Bridget told me that as a way of trying to target Katie, of like, you know, you have to save me, like Katie's a threat, you know, Katie has advantages. But it kind of backfired on Bridget, because it made Katie more valuable to me in a way, because I was like, I think I might be able to convince Katie to give me her compass. And I thought I knew of kind of a way to kind of tug at her heartstrings and to get that to happen. And so, yeah, the next day, I think it was before the challenge, I talked to her and we just had a good conversation. It was one of our first one-on-one conversations, actually. But I kind of just threw it out there like that, you know, you don't know this game and I do. And, you know, it's kind of like if I didn't know poker and Katie's a poker player, you know, it's like letting me play with some of your chips, you know, it with some of my chips, it can benefit both of us. But, you know, I know when this can be played. People wouldn't know that I have it. There's a lot of advantages to having me do this. And I'll be totally honest, you know, when I did this, it was totally with ill intent. I was like, you know, this is my chance to make a big move and to do something devious that, you know, in Survivor, you know, these moves are often heralded as being very, very great moves. You know, people didn't necessarily view it in the same way at the end of the game. But I did think, obviously, it gave me a lot of control and a lot of power being able to have this compass and choose how to use it. But what I didn't anticipate from the conversation I had with her is how much trust it built with Katie, with her giving me the compass, but also kind of like saying like, I'm with you. And she even said like, I don't care if I win. I want to help someone else. And you seem like the type of person to win. So I was expecting to be able to kind of take it and not necessarily feel attached to Katie and having to play with her. But I actually felt the other way. When she gave it to me, I was like, I really feel like I kind of have to play with Katie. I would feel kind of wrong not. And I also think she's the type of person that would never betray me. So I did kind of change my tune on that and decide that like Katie might be the person I want to go to the end.
Well, that actually that explains kind of like the next day, right? Because you guys lose again the competition. This time though, it's a double crossroads, so two teams have to vote people out. So your team is dwindling in numbers at this point, right? You have to vote someone else out. You guys choose to go for Bridget. So basically, I guess it kind of explains why the Bridget vote at this point. Right?
It does. I felt very attached to Katie, and I also felt like it would just be such a scummy move for me to just like totally just take the compass and cut her. And it's also like I trusted Katie so much because of how much trust she put in me by giving me the compass. And even though she'd kind of proven to be unpredictable, now that she didn't have the destiny token and couldn't do something like that again, it was kind of like I saw the potential that Katie was almost like a second vote for me. That's kind of what I hoped, of like whatever way I'm voting, like if I can always get Katie to vote with me, it's like having two votes in the game, which is huge. But at the same token, it's so hard to hide being a duo in this game. I knew it was going to be very hard for us not to be considered a duo in the game, and for people want to split us up at some point. But
well, with the numbers also dwindling down at this point, you guys were left only 3 people. So you've talked a lot about your relationship to Katie at this point. Now, how is that your relationship with Haley built during this period?
Yeah, Haley was truly my strategic partner. She was the person I talked the most strategy with, and she knows the game really well too. So she was definitely the person that was the most valuable to bounce ideas off of and come up with plans. So Haley and Katie were like had become at that point like my 2 closest people. And I was terrified about Bridget playing her destiny token because I didn't know what I would do on a revote at that point, because we were all putting our votes on Bridget. Because I would have to choose between Katie and Haley if that came, because I felt pretty confident that both of them would be with me on a revote and vote for the other, but then it would put me in this really weird position. So I'm really thankful that didn't happen. And I'm also really thankful that they had the option of sending Bridget to the serrated peak. And when that was put on the table, I was like, oh no, this would ruin everything if Bridget is sent to the serrated peak, because then it would have to come down to the 3 of us. So it was kind of amazing that we were able to do it without Bridget playing her destiny token too. So
yeah, that choice by Philip that day to send Mariana to the peak definitely changed a lot of the course of events throughout the game. Like
I was sure he was going to choose Bridget, but
I thought that too.
I was so thankful because as soon as he said that, my heart just sank. I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And I'd actually like already made the choice of like, if it came down to it, I think I would have voted Haley out just because like I thought Katie was going to be so loyal to me, but like like having to vote either of them out at that point would have been just like tragic to you know, I'm so glad at that point in the game like that it didn't come down to that because that would have changed everything.
So I have a little insight on that because I just did Mike's interview on Thursday night. Apparently, it was Mike who convinced Philip to choose Mariana because he wanted to test Danielle and Olivia to see if they would have voted the way he wanted them to, which was to keep Bambi. If they had voted Bambi out, he knew he couldn't trust them because he had told them both he wanted to work with them and Bambi. And so he was testing.
From his day zero.
From his day zero. So yeah, he was testing Olivia and Danielle, apparently. So he got Philip to choose Mariana.
No, I mean, that's a very, very smart way to go about it. Yeah.
I mean, I told him that's a very risky one because, you know, you risk losing someone that you supposedly are close to, but, you know, but at the same time, it's definitely.
Right. But yeah, Philip also seems like a strategic enough player. I'm surprised. I don't know. He seems like a hard person to manipulate in that way. So that's I mean, the way it worked out was obviously for the best and
for Team Janet.
For Team Janet. For Team Janet it was. Yeah, because it certainly was a tough swap for Kelly's, that's for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of swaps, the next day you guys have a swap again and you go into two tribes, two parties, and you luck out again. You're with Katie and Haley still. And then you guys find out you're doing the battle back against the secluded peak folk. So many surprises in one day.
I know. There was a lot of surprises, and that became just such a must win because not only would we have to vote someone out, but someone would get voted back in. And, you know, I was a part of voting, you know, 3 of them out. So I really did not want any of them coming back onto my party just because I knew I would have an immediate enemy. Because I lied to each and every one of them that I wasn't going to vote for them because I did not want these Destiny tokens to be played. So yeah.
So is it fair to say then that you were rooting for perhaps Jess to come back? Because
yes, absolutely. Because I talked with Jess on day 0 and we had a day 0 alliance. And Jess also lived in Cleveland, had just recently moved from Cleveland. So I knew there was kind of a bit of a hometown connection there. So yeah, Jess was definitely who I wanted to come back. But that was probably the first challenge where I really kind of showed that I'm pretty good at challenges, and because that was the ice sliding one.
Oh, that was a nail biter for us. Like I think Jess and I were commentating that night, and we were like till the end. We're like, oh my god! Like the map was so close. We thought we had a whole bunch of scenarios. Like you know, that was a really fun one to watch.
Yeah, but, and you crushed it.
So that one really I know I got because I think it was 6 ice cubes. I think I got 5 of them in the one. So I'm pretty sure I got the lowest score of anyone.
Your team has the top 2 scores, if I recall that night. You and maybe the top 2 of the top 3. You, Joshua wasn't on your team, but he scored well, and Bambi were the top 3 scorers. You guys ended up in a very good position. You guys don't have to vote that night. And you guys have to let the other party worry about voting someone else, and then only one player is coming back. So it ends up working out for you because it's out of all people, it was Jess who came back. So
it was kind of best case scenario for me. So I was really happy about that, and it can't be understated just like how valuable time is when you don't have to strategize. Because it's kind of there's kind of not enough time to build a lot of personal relationships in a lot of points in the game, unless you win. Because you're strategizing before the challenge, you're strategizing about the challenge, and then after the challenge, you're trying to figure out how to get out. But it was definitely a time for me to get to know Bambi and Philip a bit better, and for me to reconnect with Mike, who is now on the tribe again, and re-solidify our threesome with me, him, and Haley. So yeah.
Well, on day 6, you guys are not so lucky. You end up losing, and you guys have to vote someone like. Now, that night, following your conversations, it seemed pretty apparent that you guys felt like or knew that the person voted the person you would vote for would not necessarily be out of the game.
Right.
That's at some point, someone even suggested that that person would get a chance to win an advantage. You guys still decided to vote for Philip, former Team Kelly at that point. Walk me through that decision. Like, what was what factored into that decision for voting for him? Because eventually he was only sent to the Serrated Peak for the night and got to come back the next day with an advantage. So
or an advantage that was played against me even. So yeah.
Yeah.
So part of it is just the unknown. Like we didn't know what was going to happen. Like in a way, it's too big of a risk to vote someone we trust out and just hope that it's something positive, because there's a possibility that person is actually gone. But since no advantages were allowed to be played, we thought, okay, this is them kind of signaling that, this is something different, especially since that had happened on a prior season. So we're pretty confident, but like in a game like this, you can't assume that you know what's going to happen, because we thought like most likely we're voting them to the other tribe. That's what we thought was probably happening, but it's too risky. Like, even if that's the case, even if there is an advantage that could be possible, I'm not going to tell people to vote for me, because, the fear of unknown was really high. And so we had to kind of try and make a safe choice. And obviously Mike was protecting Bambi, and I could tell he and Bambi were fairly close at that point. So Philip, just kind of by process of elimination, kind of had to be the vote.
But it worked out for Philip at the end, because he got an advantage.
It did work out for Philip, because Mike was trying to throw out, what about Katie? But like, just knowing Katie, especially if she was not, like, Katie was a very emotional player. Like when Bridget voted for her, Katie was crying. Like that like broke Katie's heart, because she felt like Bridget and Herb had built a bond at Serrated Peak. So I knew like it would be a disaster to vote for Katie, even if it was a sign of trust of like, you might be getting an advantage of some kind, that it could really, really, really backfire. So it kind of had to be Philip, and obviously that didn't work out well for me.
So the next time the other party loses, so you don't have to worry about going to Crossroads, Jess, who came in, got voted out. Following that episode, you guys make it to the rendezvous, which is when you guys sending Philip home came into play with his new advantage.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have actually mind losing the challenge prior, just to have my vote for rendezvous, because we were in a numbers advantage in our party. But yeah, going to rendezvous with all these new relationships, with all these people I didn't meet, and without a vote, was extremely stressful.
When did you find out you lost your vote?
So I found that out. Philip played it pretty brilliantly, actually. He did it when Mike and Karl went to the Serrated Peak after the previous challenge. So he played it on me then, and I got message. So then it obviously leads me to think either Karl or Mike must have played this on me. So it was a great smokescreen. I complimented him after the game. I was like, that was really well done, because you made me really paranoid, because I assumed that it had to be Karl or Mike that had done this. And I was like, well, it's got to be Karl. But then my mind is racing. I was like, but what if it's Mike? What if Mike wants to blindside Katie? Even if he doesn't want to blindside me, he might, because Mike definitely wanted Katie out at prior votes. And I think he was pretty concerned that she and I were close. So I was thinking it might have been a tactic that he used to try and maybe separate me and Katie. But yeah, my mind was racing and all these different things. I was super paranoid. I actually thought it was Mike. I was like, oh, Mike, I know it was you. But yeah, I was a paranoid mess, clearly. And Philip made a great move on that.
On top of that, you're coming in as a former Team Janet, yes, but you're one of the 3 former Team Janets that has spent the most time away from any other Team Janets. So you don't have a vote. And we, like, I mean, it doesn't end up happening necessarily at that point in the game, but you know that in this type of game, that this is a prime moment for the people in the minority to pull some people on their side and make a move. So you must be very worried without a vote.
Yeah. And I had told people that I trust that I didn't have a vote, but you know how telling people things like it got everywhere. Everyone knew. And I'm sure Philip told people because he knew the disadvantage on, but everyone knew at Rendezvous I didn't have a vote. So it was very public knowledge of just kind of how vulnerable I was in that sense.
And you knew that your name was being thrown around that first night too.
Yeah. No, I knew my name was being thrown around. I'd clearly pissed off Philip. And even though me and Philip have talked a bunch after the show, but we kind of had no reason to trust each other just from the way things had been going. So, you know, I certainly tried to talk with Philip even during the Rendezvous, trying to see, like, is there any way we can shift to this so that it's not just me versus you and both of our names being thrown out there. But a lot of people weren't talking strategy with me because they know I didn't have a vote. So I was like trying to like but people were like, no, I need to talk to so-and-so because getting their vote matters. You're just a spectator. So it was that was a really, really frantic one. And I knew that I was going to get several votes. I knew I was going to get several votes. It kind of felt like people were trying to do a vote split between me and Philip because there was a lot of speculation that Philip had a compass as well. And Katie, unfortunately broke a promise to me. We promised that we would never tell anyone that she gave me the compass, but Katie told Karl that she gave me the compass, and Karl told everyone, and everyone and I knew Katie was the leak because I had not told anyone. So as soon as people are saying that I had a compass, I was like, well, Katie spilled the beans. So I was pretty frustrated with her, and I had kind of some short conversations with her, but she was just trying to assure me, like, she was like, no one's voting for you. No one's voting for you. You don't have to worry about it. And I was like, Katie, I know people are voting for me. I have some information you don't, like, please believe me. And me telling her that I might have to play the compass for myself is ended up what really fractured our alliance together.
We ended up in a pretty dramatic crossroad for sure.
Yeah.
You end up having to play the compass, and even though the majority of the votes were not on you, you definitely had your name called 3 times. Like you mentioned, they were splitting the vote between you and Philip. There was a vote out for Haley as well. So it wasn't as straightforward, I guess, of a vote as one would think.
Well, what I found out afterwards is Bambi was the one that switched her vote to Haley. She was going to vote for me, but because she knew I had a compass and because people thought Philip had a compass, she threw out a stray vote because she didn't know there was also a separate split vote with a couple votes for Katie. So she wanted to make sure that if both of us played a compass, that was Bambi's strategy at that point, which, you know, makes sense. But yeah, it easily could have been a vote split on me. And if everyone knows I had a compass and didn't play it, I probably go home there. Like that's what I would do. So I knew I either needed to play it or I needed to give it back to her. So you know, I know there's a lot of speculation about this, but like I openly in front of Crossroads, because I wasn't able to talk with Katie again, in front of everyone, I said, Katie, I feel like I'm in a lot of trouble. I feel like I need to play this, but this is your compass. And if you want me to give it back to you right now, I can. And I mean, and the way I remember it specifically saying is, I believe she said, do what you need to do. Like, is that what you remember hearing? Because
something
I know it's been
lines, yeah,
it was. She said, "Do what you need to do," which to me sounds like permission. It seems like, okay, like you're allowing me to make the choice. So I did play it on myself, and at that point, with it being such a public compass, it kind of needed to be played to just reduce the threat level. Because if I didn't play it, or even if I gave it back to her, like, you know, people are going to be making plans to flush this compass and to split me and Katie up potentially. So
can I just say that also your season really excelled at talking between the vote and the actual reveal of the vote. So you in the section where advantages are supposed to be played, you guys would go on in another completely other crossroad conversation and really drag the results for the longest. So obviously you had that conversation with Katie, and also we saw the the entertainment skills of Joshua come out that night. Any thoughts on basically what
that
what
was so
happened
devious? That was, you really like rubbed that in Philip's face. That was a side of Joshua I hadn't really seen yet. Yeah.
It made you look like a saint right then and there.
I don't know. People certainly did not view me as a saint after some time passed.
It ended up working out for you the next vote. Your name wasn't thrown around at all. No. Because your devious behavior made you seem like a safer option to keep around. But
yeah, I thought I did it in a way that still seemed loyal, because if I played it without her permission, super snaky, people aren't going to trust me. So that was a really important way for me to play the compass, but it did result in Katie totally losing trust with me. And I wish I was able to clear things up with Katie. That's kind of my main regret of because I feel like if I didn't know that she lost trust in me by me doing that, because apparently overnight, like, she got just furious that I had played this compass. And I feel like if we had just talked one-on-one the next day, we could have cleared it up, but we just never did. And I didn't know anything was wrong. So
yeah, that would have helped.
It would have.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure if it would have.
I think it would have. I mean, Katie's very an emotional player. And I think, like, because I talked to Katie after the game and I cleared everything up with her. Like, I talked to her and I basically explained to her that, like, I was never against you. I wanted to go deep with you. And she was like, but you kept on trying to avoid me by being in rooms with other people. I was like, I wasn't avoiding you. I was just strategizing with people I didn't trust rather than.
And that's the thing. That's why I think, in playing with Katie, I think she's definitely a player that requires a lot of attention. You need to really foster that relationship. But the problem with that is that it takes time away from fostering other relationships. And at the end of the day, she's one vote versus so many other votes. So you could have patched things up, but I'm not sure. I don't know how that would have affected your relationships with others, because you would not have had that time to strategize with other people.
No, that's absolutely true. And, for my long-term game, Katie going probably benefited me because it reduced the target of being a duo. And it made other people trust me more and made me rely on them more, which made them trust me even more. So, it was a weird thing because, like, I very much enjoyed playing with my head and being a strategic player, but Katie did have me, like, playing with my heart, feeling like I owed her something. And, when I started hearing that she was throwing my name out to go home, I was kind of shocked, but I was just like, what happened? And I knew at that point having a one-on-one conversation with her would look kind of devious, because people would be suspecting of, like, is he trying to change the vote? Is he trying to give her an advantage or something? So I kind of knew I needed to just there wasn't time to change the vote off of her, and I can't protect someone that no longer wants to play with me. So, Katie being the next vote, had to be what happened. And the fact that it was unanimous was, kind of a symbol that everyone found her to be too unpredictable to play with at that point.
It's also interesting because I think this is a stretch of the game where anyone that appeared to be part of a group or duo, or in your case, kind of a trio, became a target. Now, so on this particular night, Haley wins and one of her trio members is eliminated. And then on the next night, you're the one who wins, and your other, like, a pretty visible duo partner is the one voted out, Haley, and someone has a blind side as well. So
I was blindsided for sure. Well, I had
from 0 to 10. How blindsided were you on that vote?
It was a 6 or 7. I definitely thought the votes were going to go the other way. I thought I'd made, because having an exemption, it's a confidence booster because you kind of have a bit more leeway to make a bold move because it can't turn back on you, at least on that vote. So Josh was who I considered to be kind of the biggest player that I wasn't connected with. And so I really wanted him out next, just because I know if I don't have a strong relationship with him, I know he has strong relationships with other people. Like, he has a plan and I'm not part of it. And that's always kind of a scary thing. So I was really gunning for him. I talked to Mariana and Danielle. They seemed on board. We were actually trying to keep Mike out of it because Mike had shown such a want to play with Josh in a way to have their two half compasses combined to make a big move. So we didn't want Mike to be in on it, but Bambi seemed to be in on, like, there was Haley was in on it. That we definitely had enough votes to make it happen, but Danielle and Mariana flipped on it without my knowledge, and instead tried to target my closest ally in the game, one of my closest ally in the game, because Mike was certainly still a very close ally. But yeah, that was really tough because me and Bambi ended up being the only two people on the wrong side of the vote, well, along with Haley. And that's a bad sign. And my target was just so huge at that point. I just wanted a vote to go my way, but Rendezvous was tough for me, and I certainly ended up playing from the bottom for a good bit there.
Yeah, at that point, they had eliminated your two closest allies, so you were like pretty much on your own at that point, just fighting for your life, and you played great from the bottom. And as much as it sucked to see your two closest allies go, I think it ended up working out for you because you became a pivotal vote. You could swing and control where things were going.
No, it's a blessing and a curse because it kind of, it puts me in a position with less allies and less power. But the two people that I was most notably connected with were now gone. So I was considered less of a threat, just because a lot of people didn't feel like I had numbers to do things. But people did also underestimate the connections I did have, because me and Danielle had been working with each other for a long time, and we had a good amount of trust with each other. Mariana and I hadn't really talked a whole lot, but like we had this day zero alliance that at that point, like, Mariana didn't have anything else to rely on except for that alliance. And so that was super covert. And then I had Mike, who had a lot of connections and influence. So I was more connected than people realized, but you're right that it probably did benefit my game in a bit to lose the people that I was so visibly connected to. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so the next day, you end up making a great move at Crossroads that just shakes things up. Talk about that.
Yeah. So it was something I was kind of fiddling with because I thought there was a good chance I was never going to need my Destiny token or never want the risk of losing my vote to get the Destiny token. And so I became pretty sure that the votes were going to Karl in a pretty big swing. And Karl was who I wanted out anyhow, because he had lied to me multiple times in the game. He clearly didn't want to work with me. And I tried to gun for Josh, and clearly that didn't work. Josh had some connections and people that didn't want him gone. But Karl was the other part of that duo that had made a bit more enemies than Josh at that point. And so once it seemed like there was a good 6 or 7 people that were voting for him, I basically was like, my vote doesn't matter. I know my vote doesn't matter, and I could use my vote in a very valuable way. And it's risky because if I need my Destiny token later, I don't have it. But information is power in this game. And if you create information that only like only I would know that I played the Destiny token, and I could divert it. What I'd initially planned on doing is I could create paranoia on who played the Destiny token. I'm like, oh, we think Bambi played her Destiny token. That's a pretty easy vote then, because she can't play it. If I can convince someone else. But it worked out in a beautiful way, because everyone was sure, 100% sure, that Karl played the Destiny token. And Josh was very verbal that he had played his. but everyone was positive that Karl played his as well. So no one had any speculation or anything like that. And then the beautiful gift that Karl left me, the beautiful gift was he voted for Mike, and no one could figure out where that Mike vote came from. And I talked to him right before. I knew that Karl wanted it to be Mike, and I knew that that vote was his, but I could use that paranoia kind of however I wanted to really shift a target on someone. And that ended up being such a pivotal move in my game. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and we saw that play out the next day because the Olivia Mike alliance just crumbles. Communication completely gone, and fireworks. We have one of the most entertaining crossroads so far this season. And so basically that day was Bambi ends up winning the challenge, and she basically, now it's her turn now to see one of her two closest allies in the game basically get voted out, which also works out on your end, because then Bambi becomes Olivia goes home, and so Bambi now sees you as an alternative to Olivia in the trio that she had going on. But
yeah, Bambi and I had already formed a bit of a bond because we were the only two people on the wrong side of the Haley vote.
Yeah.
So we had talked a bit of like, we're at the bottom, like we need to scrap together, we need to look out for each other together. And she was able to kind of replace Haley's place in the trio with me and Mike, because Mike had already obviously formed a bond with her, and I knew he and her were close, but then she and I came close, and we kind of became a bit of a trio there that was a bit covert. Yeah, it just worked out so perfectly, because like the day before, I even like said to myself in the confessional, like, Olivia is the keystone that I need to remove from this game, because Olivia and I weren't super close, but she was super close to a lot of people. So she was so well connected that I knew if I could find some way to get Olivia out of the game, it would make Mike, it would make Danielle, who were both close to Olivia, rely on me more. And I needed that. I needed them to not have an escape route or another option in terms of Olivia. So yeah, when that paranoia started coming around and Olivia threw out the fact that Danielle might have been the Mike vote, it created tension between them. And then she, and then Olivia was so mad that Mike had told Danielle this, that Olivia threw out in a room with me that she wanted Mike gone. And I was like, yeah, Mike's a big player, we should do Mike. And then I immediately go to Mike, and I didn't even have to lie about it. I just be like, Olivia threw your name out there. And Mike's like, I knew it. She's turning on me. So, getting those combating and, getting Olivia out at that vote was certainly the most pivotal way of me taking control of the game. So.
No, I really enjoyed how you ended up playing that. That was really fun to see, because you basically just like a little lie by omission, and then just like it's just like snowball, and all you have to do is just like sit back. You don't have to lie anymore. You just let them do it, and you just report back. So it
worked out perfectly. But I just threw all this tinder on the fire. I was like, yeah, all right. And I could have resolved that so easily, but I didn't want to resolve that. Why would I want to resolve that? So. Yeah, I think a big mistake a lot of players make is they reveal too much information, because even if I just told one person that I was the one that played the Destiny token, which I feel like is a lot of people do, it's like, oh, I have to trust one person, it would have spread. Someone would have told someone else and it would have spread. So no one knew that was, I thought even the jury might have picked up at the end, but like even they didn't know who had played the Destiny token at that point. Clearly, like they all thought it was Mariana that had played it, and I was like, oh, no one knows what happened there. That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then the next round, you finally take your guy Josh out. You wanted him gone for a long time. That one seemed to go pretty easy.
Yeah. It was still definitely a pivotal thing, because Bambi and Mike really wanted it to be Mariana. And Mariana was part of this kind of hidden trio I had, and neither of them were aware how close I was to her. Well, we that's the thing, is we didn't have a whole lot of one-on-one conversations, Mariana and but we had this trust because I knew she had no one else. I knew that we were, her trio with me and Danielle was kind of the thing she was banking on the most. I talked to Bambi and she was like, so this should be an easy vote, right? Mariana, because Josh had voted with us on the Olivia vote and we kind of had made a bit of a foursome there. But I just told Bambi, I was like, do you really think Mariana is the biggest threat to our final three with me, you, and Mike? And she's like, well, maybe not. I was like, yeah, don't you think like Josh is the more strategic player? He's probably has a plan. He's probably the bigger threat to our trio. So I pretty quickly turned Bambi, but I knew the big thing was turning Mike because Mike had the half compass. He'd been real anxious to play it with Josh. So I knew I couldn't make this move without Mike's permission in a way, because he could have spoiled it if he wanted. And so I really needed to convince Mike that Josh was the big threat to our trio going forward. And I was able to do that because he still really wanted it to be Mariana, but I was able to convince him otherwise that Mariana wasn't as big of a threat. So.
I mean, it's pretty interesting that Mike had been calling Mariana's name every round since the rendezvous and only voted for her once. So.
I know. No, I protected Mariana a lot.
Yeah, no, I think you guys did a very good job at that.
I really wanted to craft this final five where I was the middle person between five people, where I had two trios. And Josh was the only person not part of a final three with me. And, it needed to be Josh because then I didn't need a win at final five and I would just be the swing vote. And that's the position I wanted to be in. So
now,
it's a great way to set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it took a lot of work and planning to do it. And obviously there's luck that goes in play because there have to be agendas that align to make votes happen. But I did a pretty good job of whipping votes together, I think. And I do think the Olivia vote and the Josh votes were primarily my doing.
I thought you definitely positioned yourself in a great place at this point in the game. And it's interesting that you're talking about two final threes, because in the next round, you're in a position where you now have to choose which of the final threes that you want to end up going with. But one thing that I thought was super interesting is that the conversation at some point in the night switches from it's going to be a final three to it's going to be a final two. And I think that played a little bit of a role in which side you ended up going with. Correct me if I'm wrong, but who came up with this idea of a final two? And how much did that affect your decision?
It was a factor. I don't think it was the biggest factor though, because I knew that season 1 and season 2 had both been final threes, but I believe that some of the minis that had been done were final twos. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kilimanjaro was the one right before the small one, right before you was
So Danielle had told me that that Expedition Online had done final twos before. So it had to be consideration. And I certainly asked the mods if like they could reveal whether it's going to be a final 2 or 3. And they said, we can't say anything. So I was like, okay, it's on the table. Like it's on the table that final 2 could be a possibility. But a lot of it came down to picking the trio I thought I had the best chance to win against. And I thought Mike was probably at that point the biggest person that was going to win. I think Mike played a great social game. He's very articulate. He's just so good at saying his points in Crossroads. I didn't want to be, even though he was my closest ally, I didn't want to sit next to him at the end. And so figuring out the road to get my ideal final 3 was kind of what it was, because I would have loved to make it Mariana and Bambi, but figuring out how to do that, it didn't seem to be something that would be doable, because I felt like if I'd taken out Mike at that final 5 vote, the 3 girls could have easily turned on me, because there was, the original Kelly connection between Mariana and Bambi, and I knew Danielle was a pretty aggressive player, and it just seemed it seemed really risky to take out Mike at that point. Whereas, if I'd taken out Danielle I didn't know Danielle had a compass, so I couldn't have taken out Danielle at that point anyhow. But taking out Mariana, that also couldn't have worked well, because, Mike and Danielle were pretty close, and Mike and Bambi were really close. And, if they wanted to swing around on me, they could. I thought my surest bet to get to the final three and potentially a final two was with Mariana and Danielle, but I felt like I needed Mike as a shield. Mike had done a lot of things in the game, but he hadn't done great at challenges. And as long as we could have beat him in the final ascent, I was pretty sure that Mariana and Danielle would be with me 100% to get rid of Mike. So I needed Mike in the game at that point. Plus, without Bambi, I thought he would be relying on me more than anyone else. And it, again, would just put me in a position of power.
Both of those, the day 13, day 14, it went very well according to plan for you. When Mike pitched you the fire making challenge, did you consider that at all?
I did. And I'll tell you why. And I'll also tell you where Mike messed up. And I told Mike later on where he kind of messed up on this, is because I had a one-on-one with, I thought it was a sure thing that me, Mariana, and Danielle were going to be the final three. Mike was a big target, but Danielle, after winning that, she showed a different side that she had kind of hidden at that point. I knew she was a devious player. I knew she'd lied to me a bit before, but she really kind of, had the power, and she, she showed it, and she floated to me. She was like, if I were to vote you out, do you think you'd still vote for me on the jury? And I was like, Danielle, what are you doing? So Danielle was seriously considering voting me out. And I told her, and this is a lie, I've been on juries before. I am not a bitter juror. I have love for the game. I want to vote for the best game. But at that point, she's trying to get permission for me to vote her out. And if I tell her I'm going to vote for her, she's, that can factor into how she votes herself of oh, David's a sure vote for me. I'm going to vote him out. So I told her, no, I'm going to be very bitter. I'm going to be extremely bitter. We had a final three, and I even made a final two with her. If there's a final two, it's me and you. And so I really laid the guilt on there of no, if you put me on jury, I'm going to destroy you. And that was kind of the last card I had. And she visibly went David, I could tell it was not the way she wanted the conversation to go. And she tried to make it seem later on that, I never would have betrayed you. I just wanted to make it interesting. But I was like, Danielle, I know you didn't want to make it interesting. You were weighing your options, and I made the decision as hard for you to turn on me as possible.
Let me tell you something. When you, and this is for everyone watching, when you want to really get to know previous players who've played before, you watch their seasons. Okay?
I know.
Because if you wanted to know what kind of player Danielle was, all you have to do was watch her season. Because there was no surprise for us.
If I didn't have a 7-month-old and a full-time job, I would have watched all the previous seasons and really, I did want to watch her season because I was kind of curious to see what it was. I just didn't have the time. I was just I was a madman in terms of just everything I was doing at that point in time. But yeah, I mean, I definitely underestimated how many alliances Danielle had, and
she had a lot.
And once she had a lot, yeah. I thought I was her only day zero alliance. I was like, oh, you had multiple day zero alliances, Danielle? Jeez, well, that's a risky way to play. She's lucky that none of us ever talked to each other.
That's all I'm saying.
No, it's a risky way to play. No, I certainly could have benefited from. So I'll go back to the potential splitting the votes. So. I was talking with Mike one-on-one, and I told him right after the Danielle conversation, I was like, I really think Danielle's considering me. This is crazy. And he's like, well, she's considering me too. We could put a stop to this. If we put 2 votes on Mariana, regardless of which way Mariana and Danielle decide, we would each have a shot. So, it was a protection if they were both trying to blindside us. And now that I'm feeling like I'm scrambling a bit, I was like, that's actually a really good idea. Because if I vote for Mariana and Mike votes for Mariana, then regardless of whatever Danielle and Mariana decide, I would have a shot if they decide to betray me. And at that point, I just wanted to get the final three. I thought I had the best argument to win the game. And if I had to sit next to Mike to do it, I could have. But I obviously wanted Mariana and Danielle, but I was really afraid of them betraying. And then Mike and Danielle talked again, and Mike came back and he said, well, you're my final hope. Like, Danielle's voting for me, and you're my last hope on splitting it. And at that point I was like, oh, I think my name's actually off the table, because I could see that he was really stressed. If Mike had told me and stuck to it that Danielle had told him that they were gunning for me, but they were trying to hide it, then that would have made me have to weigh the risk of, like, if there's a possibility I'm going to be the vote, I need to vote for Mariana and potentially tie it, with me and Mike potentially being unsure where Mariana and Danielle were going. But
If he had said that, would you have voted for Mariana?
I would have. Yeah,
would have been so juicy.
I know. If he had said that, and I told him that after the game, of like, this was your play that you missed, and he was like, oh, you're right. Like, he could see my point. Yeah, but if I really thought I was in danger, I would have, as a contingency plan, voted for Mariana to at least be able to have a shot at some sort of tiebreaker challenge. But he made it so clear that he was dead man walking, and I knew he wasn't faking it, because he had no reason to fake it. That I was like, okay, now he's just asking me to tie it for him as a favor. And I already decided I didn't want to sit next to Mike. I'm not doing this for him as a favor, but I would have done it if I really thought I was possibly in danger. And Danielle made me sweat. So it was something I was considering.
So you made it to the final three. Woohoo. You guys definitely had a tough jury experience. One, did you think it was going to be like that? And two, how do you think you did?
Okay. It was definitely way, 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 way worse than I possibly expected. I knew Katie was probably going to have some tough words for me, and compared to other people, she was actually not too bad to me. But yeah, there was a lot of surprising people. Josh and Karl and Mike too, actually. Like, the vibe the jury gave off is that we were like the three most undeserving people that could have possibly mistakenly bumbled our way to the end together. I was like, what game were you watching? Like, that's I don't know. I love playing games, and I'm pretty lighthearted about it. I've never been a bitter juror myself, and I've been on a jury, but to me it's like, there's a reason everyone got there. And it just kind of felt like there was a general lack of mutual respect of, like, I thought we'd at least like respect of, like, you played a good game, but there was a lot of people that were just like, you three are trash. And I wasn't expecting that vibe entirely.
Neither were we.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Was it fun to watch? Hell yeah. but I really did feel bad for you guys. I thought, like, in general in these games, if you make it to the final, you deserve to be there. Now now the next part of this is, can you defend the game that you played? Have you read the jury properly and make sure that you played a game that's going to appeal to the jury that you've been given? And I guess that was the part that was maybe hard for you guys, but how did you think you did in answering the questions of your jury?
Not great. I was expecting to talk a bit more about game moves and about different things, but some of their questions were like, what? Like, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan. Like, clearly there was some sort of,
you can say names. This is a safe space.
yeah. Clearly there was kind of a bit of a toxic vibe and a bitter vibe on the jury chat, because, like, even like when we blindsided Bambi went out with a smile, and like, hey, I take it as respect. Like, you wouldn't target me if I wasn't a big threat. And she left with a smile, and it was, but then like when I see Bambi as a juror, she is just like stoic and she is angry. And I was like, what has changed? Like, what, this is not the person I was anticipating facing. And, and getting questions of like, her Bambi's question was like, do you think I'm going to vote for you? I was like, I don't know. Like, what are your criteria, Bambi? Like, chill out.
Well, then maybe like, I guess the question for you, because I feel like that word did come out a few times, not necessarily from you, but during the final crossroad. Do you think that all three of you did a good job at managing their jury? Like, were you guys thinking about the jury and how the dynamics of what was going on in jury would affect basically that final vote? Or did you guys not think about it at all? And maybe that's something
I honestly didn't think about it that much, because, to me, it was more important about it advancing. And like, as much as I want to have a positive relationship with people when they leave, with destiny tokens, I can't give people heads up that they're going to be going. Like, and to me, I felt like I had a game that I could defend, and I felt like I had a game I could speak to. And I was confident going in that there was a possibility of getting anyone's vote, because I strongly, and I still feel I strongly played the best strategic game, and I wanted to be able to speak to that. Something I actually wish is like Final Ascent being so short. There was so much I wanted to say that I didn't get to say, but it's a 5-minute opening statement, and then you have to respond to their questions, and a lot of their questions didn't really feed into things I wanted to say. So definitely a big question I bungled hard was Mike's question of what admirable thing did you do in the game? Like, why should we admire your game? And I was like kind of thrown off by the question. It's like, can't you admire my strategic game? But I realized that's not what he was looking for. He thought we were all, villainous snakes, and he wanted to see, what I wish I had said is like, I was a really loyal player until I couldn't be anymore, until I had to make a choice. Like, I defended Mike, I defended Bambi, I defended Mariana, I defended Danielle. I saved them at different points when their names were brought up, and I switched things the different way. I protected the people that I was really close to, and I wish I'd said that. Of like, I think my loyalty was actually not something that a lot of the jurors saw, because the narrative was that I played dirty. I played Katie really dirty. And that was kind of a hard perception to break, because from what I heard, like every time a new juror came in, Katie told the story of woe and what a scumbag I was. And not fixing things with Katie, I think, really damaged my game, because I talked to her after the game, and I still think this is true. No one had Katie's back more than me in the game. I may have convinced her to give me a compass with ill intent, but I actually was trying to play with her, and no one else was. I actually was trying to do it. And,
do you think that you were thrown off by how bitter the jury was?
Yeah. No, I certainly have regrets about how how I responded to the jury. There were certain questions I wish I'd answered better, but yeah, like Karl said, I was an undeserving third place GOAT. And I was like, what? Like, how did I deserve that? Like, Karl was acting like I was the easy person to take to the end because I was the sure thing to beat. I was like, what game are you watching? Like, it was these crazy perceptions that I was like, how did this perception of me develop that I was such a, unlikable player or a dirty player? I played a cleaner game than I think people realized. And there was certainly some things, and talking to some mods and things, there were things I was being blamed on in the jury chat that weren't even me. There was this thing about like where I was celebrating, after a challenge and like rubbing it in someone's face. Someone told me that was Josh, and they misremembered who did it.
Yep, that was Josh.
and we're talking about what a scumbag I was for like, and it was like, man, I'm getting blamed for things I didn't even do. Like,
Yeah,
this is
it's
tough.
I think
interesting. No,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
I'm probably gonna say the same thing as you, but I'm really excited for everyone to watch it back because like we have such a different perception since we saw everything. And I think your castmates will feel a lot differently once they saw how loyal you were and how many good moves you made. Like you said it right,
Now,
you were loyal until you couldn't be anymore.
Yeah.
and you know what kind of burned me is I didn't really have a whole lot of people on the jury early that were like rooting for me or that knew my game and could speak to my game, because Haley could, but Haley's also pretty quiet. And I know I talked to her after the game, and she was like, it was just a tidal wave of kind of hate against you that I couldn't stop. But like, you know, it's part of playing this constricted game where we can only talk 3 hours a day. And I'm mostly only talking strategy with people. And maybe that was a mistake I made in terms of not building a personal relationship with people like Karl and Josh and Olivia, because like I may have talked some game with them, but I was never very close to them game wise or personally. But and Josh brought that up to me after the show. He's like, you never really made an effort to get to know me. And I was like, to be fair, Josh, you didn't make an effort to get to know me.
Yeah,
either.
I was gonna say,
Like,
Josh calling out people, I think is
Yeah.
a little.
So like they're throwing stones at my social game for not connecting with them. But like most of them, I actually felt like I tried to connect with them more than they tried to connect with me. But like I wasn't vibing with
It's a
Karl.
two-way street.
Yeah, I wasn't vibing with Karl, Josh, and Olivia, and I could tell, like, you know, that they were closer to other people than me. So yeah, I did talk to my allies more than I talked to them, and so yeah, they think I played a crap social game, and you know, I think I played a really good social game with the people that I was playing with, but yeah, I certainly had some people that didn't really know my game and didn't come in, at least in my, I think, didn't come in with enough of an open mind at Final Ascent to really give me a fair shot to explain to them the game that I played, because I did a lot more than people realized on jury. And, you know,
Well,
I don't think, I think a lot of people came in, you know, Karl for sure came in saying I'm a third place GOAT that, you know, anyone can beat. I was like, Karl, you don't know what happened in the game, man. Like,
no, you have nothing to be feel bad about. You played an amazing game. I absolutely love watching you play.
Yeah.
You were one of my favorites, and I have to say Bambi was my favorite. So you get why I can't say you were my favorite.
You said Bambi?
I have
You
to
said
say
Bambi.
I know her personally. Like I recommended her in the game. So I
No,
have
Bambi,
to say
Bambi's awesome. She's
so,
amazing. And
yeah,
I
but
enjoyed playing.
But his
Yeah.
real favorite might be you.
yeah, that's all I'm saying. I can neither confirm or deny. But
Yeah.
but given how bitter the jury was, do you think at this point, because we don't know who won the game yet, do you think there's a path for you towards victory?
It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. You know, if people were really trying to look at the strategic moves, you know, there's a possibility Philip voted for me. There's, you know, a possibility Mike voted for me, maybe. But, you know, Mike was actually the juror that, like, I don't know, personally hurt me the most, because he had the most awareness of my game. He knew a lot of the things I had done, and not even all the things I had done. Like, no one had known the Destiny token play or anything like that, and how I manipulated certain things. But you know, he called my game disgusting, and I was like, disgusting? I was so like
dramatic.
Yeah, that word like kind of rang within me for a good like day and a half, where I was like, how did I play disgusting? Like, even if you think I played aggressive or snaky or villainous, like I'm not a hateful person. I never put negativity into the game. I just played hard. I played hard. I am like one of the most brutally honest, loyal people in my personal life. And I love a game like this that gives me permission to you know, do things.
A little devious.
Exactly. I love playing a little devious. And, you know, I'm not someone that plays devious in my normal life. And having the permission to do that and not have to be a bad person because you're doing it. But then all of a sudden I got to the end and they're like, you play devious, you're a bad person. I was like, come on. where's the suspension of like, we're playing a game for charity that we all love. Like, where's the love for the game? There was just a lot of people that played very personally, and that was definitely a shock to see on the jury. And I talked to Mike afterwards, and he apologized for calling my game disgusting. He said he like written it down and then he crossed it out, but then he said it anyhow. And a lot of jurors did tell me that they were, trying to be dramatic. They wanted to have a memorable final tribal.
Great
TV.
Yeah.
And they were playing up a lot of things, but it felt pretty personal when you were sitting there, and I was not expecting it.
Yeah, neither were we. I am
Yeah.
happy to hear that you made amends with Katie and Mike, though.
Yeah.
And again, we all loved having you. It was so much fun watching you play. And I think that your castmates will definitely feel a different way watching this back. My last question for you tonight, though, is who do you think actually won? You had to guess. We have no idea. Just curious.
Yeah. I think Mariana has the best odds, honestly. And that's if people were as bitter as they were seeming to be. Because, obviously, Danielle got a rougher final ascent than I thought too. I did not think people were going to be going on her as hard and feel as betrayed as her and not respect her game as much. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think everyone's going to get votes. I hope I at least got one vote, but geez, who knows? But yeah, I think everyone's going to get votes. So, there's a potential that's going to be a real close win, because were there 8 jurors, right? Is that right? 8. So
Sounds good.
I'm pretty sure there's 8 jurors. So like, there's a possibility someone could win with 3 votes, and then it would go to the tiebreaker between what everyone else did. So, if I win, I think it's going to be one of those 3-3-2 votes. I think that's kind of the only shot I got, because I don't think I got more than 3.
Well, as a good follow-up, and maybe my last question, now, if it were a tie and it was not between you and someone else, who would be getting your vote?
Good question.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
You can speculate. You can talk in hypotheticals.
Oh, yeah. I can talk in hypotheticals because I did write down a contingency. So yeah, if it's not me, so if it's a tie between Danielle and Mariana, that's the hypothetical.
Yes.
Yeah. If it's tied between, hypothetically, I think Danielle played a very good game. She played a great social game. I definitely think I played a better strategic game than her, but I think socially she definitely had her fingers in a lot of different pots, and had more alliances than I was aware of. She got an IO. So did Mariana. I mean, I think both would be very deserving, but to me, I think, and maybe it's someone that played a little villainously, respecting another villain. But yeah, I think Danielle did more to impact the game than Mariana, I think. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to find out who wins. We wish you the best of luck, and thank you for sitting down with us tonight, and thank you for playing. You were so much fun to have, and I hope maybe we see you on like Heroes versus Villains in the future.
Yeah, as a hero though, right? Because my hero edit.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's right. I hope to join you in the winner's circle, Jessica. I'll see you at, maybe if I get 3 votes, I'll join you at winners at Expedition.
Yes.
And all of a sudden I feel very excluded from this conversation.
Karl, you need to play back again, play
All
second
stars.
chance, get your own win. I'm kidding. I probably, I think I lost miserably, so don't worry.
Well, this has been Back at the Ranch. Thank you guys for being here tonight, and we will see you next season.
Yay!